For most of us, Christmas is all about joy, goodwill, and celebration. But there's another story, a history that's a lot less familiar. A history where that very same holiday was a time of incredible fear and persecution. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this deeply shadowed side of Christmas. And it all kind of kicks off with a joke. Back in 2010, during her Supreme Court confirmation hearing, Alina Kagan was asked what she was doing on Christmas Day. And her answer, it got a huge laugh. I mean, it's a modern classic, right? The Jewish Christmas of going for Chinese food and seeing a movie. It's witty, it's relatable, and for us, it's the doorway into a story that is anything but fun.
But what if that joke isn't just a joke? What if, behind that modern tradition, that image of families gathered around tables of lo mein, there's a faint but persistent echo of a much darker, much more dangerous past? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to try and answer.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with that modern tradition, and then we're going to jump back in time to Eastern Europe to understand a night of just profound fear. We'll look at the unique customs that were born from that danger. Then we'll explore a shocking modern outbreak of hatred. And finally, bring it all home to see how this memory still echoes today.
All right, so let's dig into that punchline itself. Why Chinese food on Christmas? The answer, it turns out, is a lot more layered than you might think.
I mean, on one hand, it's super practical. For generations of Jewish immigrants, especially in big cities like New York, Chinese restaurants were literally the only places open on December 25th. But there's another layer here, a story of exclusion. When the entire country shuts down for a holiday that isn't yours, and in fact, a holiday that was historically hostile to your people, well, you find a way to create your own traditions. And now we're going to shift gears from just feeling excluded to facing outright danger. Because for centuries, for countless Jewish families, Christmas wasn't just a day they didn't celebrate. It was a day they had to survive.
I want you to really try and picture this. As Christian neighbors are heading to midnight mass to celebrate a holy birth, Jewish families are barricading their doors. They're putting out the lights, huddling together in total silence and just praying. They weren't hiding from the weather. They were hiding from their neighbors. Christmas was prime time for pogroms, these violent anti-Jewish riots that were often even encouraged by the authorities. It was quite literally a night of terror.
And you can see this terror, this pain, baked right into the language itself. In German, Christmas is Weihnachten, the holy night. But in Yiddish, the language of Jews across Eastern Europe, it became Weihnacht, woe night. One single letter changes everything. It's the same sound, but a completely opposite meaning. A holy night for some, and a woe night for others.
And woe night was just the beginning. Look at these other names they used. Goyim Nacht, the Gentiles' night, marking it as something separate, something not for them. Finstere Nacht, the dark night. Moiridige Nacht, the fearful night. And maybe the most chilling of all, Toli Nacht, the night of the crucified one. That's a direct reference to the lie that Jews were responsible for killing Jesus, the very accusation that fueled so much of the violence on this night. Each name is like a little scar, a testament to the anguish of the holiday. So what do you do when you know that every single year on the same night, danger is coming for you? Well, you develop strategies. You create traditions, not of celebration, but of pure protection. And that is the story of Nittel Nacht. Nittel Nacht became the go-to term for Christmas Eve. We're not totally sure where the name comes from, but its purpose was crystal clear: to give rules and activities to a community under siege, turning a night of helpless fear into one of active, if very somber, observance. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating, and honestly kind of shocking for a culture that puts religious study above almost everything else. The main custom of Nittel Nacht was to forbid the study of the Torah. On this one night of the year, the holiest of activities was strictly off-limits. And the question, obviously, is why? Well, there were two huge reasons, a mix of the chillingly practical and the deeply mystical. The first one was just about survival. Rabbis banned study to keep students from walking to and from school where they'd be easy targets for violent mobs. It also kept men at home where they could stand guard and protect their families. The second reason was more theological. There was a mystical belief that the sacred act of studying the Torah would somehow give spiritual power or vitality to Jesus on his birthday, which was something they obviously wanted to avoid. So if the central act of religious life, this suspension of Torah study known as Batul Torah, is off the table, what do you do? Well, first and foremost, you stayed indoors.
To pass the incredibly tense hours, people played secular games like cards and chess. And some would quietly read these scrolls called Toledet Yeshu, which were basically derogatory counterstories about the life of Jesus. The whole night was about fearful diversion, just finding a way to wait out the darkness until morning came. Now, I know it's easy to hear all this and think, okay, that was brutal, but it's ancient history, right? Stuff from medieval Europe. But you'd be wrong. This deep, deep link between Christmas and anti-Semitism erupted with shocking force less than a lifetime ago, in an event that became known as the 1959 swastika epidemic. The date here is so important. It's Christmas morning, 1959, not even 15 years after the end of the Holocaust. The people of Cologne, West Germany, woke up to a truly sickening sight. An old symbol of pure hatred had reappeared, and it was about to spark a global firestorm. And just look at how fast this poison spread. It starts with that one synagogue in Cologne on Christmas Day. 5 days later, boom, it's in London. By January, it was a full-blown global phenomenon, an epidemic of swastika graffiti and anti-Semitic acts in 34 different countries. Back in West Germany, authorities counted over 800 incidents in less than 2 months. The entire world was just watching in horror as the ghosts of the very recent past came roaring back. And this wasn't just a European problem, not by a long shot. Here in the United States, the Anti-Defamation League tracked the crisis. In just a few months, it recorded 637 separate incidents. Swastikas on synagogues, threats, attacks on property, all across the country. The woe night of the past had found a terrifying new echo in the modern world. So all of this brings us back around to today. What is the legacy of this long, painful history? Where do all these stories of fear and survival live on now? And let's be clear about this. For the vast majority of Jews, especially in Western countries, Christmas is no longer a time of physical fear. The threat of violent mobs has, thankfully, receded into history. The main experience today is more about feeling like an outsider, not feeling like a target. And yet, the memory is still there. It's embedded in the culture. In some Hasidic communities, the customs of Nittel Nacht are actually still observed. Torah study is still suspended for the night. Now, it's no longer a precaution against an angry mob at the door, but it continues as a living memorial, a kind of cultural scar tissue that remembers the wound, a solemn echo of a time when Holy Night was anything but. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've gone from a simple joke about Chinese food all the way back to a night of barricaded doors. We've seen how a seemingly lighthearted tradition can hide a really profound and painful history. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we all go about celebrating our own holidays, whatever they happen to be, how many of our own rituals, the songs we sing, the things we do, are shaped by stories that we've long since forgotten?